James, hey, it's a pleasure seeing you again.
Yeah, man, good to see you again as well. It's been like a couple months here.
It has. Well, this time around, we're talking about another movie of yours, Captors here. So this is
Yes.
another terrific one from you.
Oh, thank you. You're too kind. That's very nice of you. It's a very different tone than the last one.
It is. I was gonna say this is way different from it. This is like how do we describe this? Obviously, it's a thriller, but it has like that sense of like horror and supernatural into
Yeah,
this.
it's very cerebral, but like also very supernatural and horror and thriller. It's everything together. I think it'd be like psychological as well. It's for me, I just was it's almost schizophrenic in nature, which kind of plays into some of the issues that the main character is dealing with. Um, but I mean, the biggest challenge of the movie for me is how do you make a person locked in the house pretty much by themselves interesting? And so I was trying to visually uh, create a style that evolved with the character's emotions. And so, the thing about the movie that was fun and challenging for me, at least, is like you can't fall into standard coverage because
Mhm.
you can't go like, okay, it's an over the shoulder and over the shoulder and like a two shot in like a scene, because the person, like, there isn't two characters. So it's like I had to find new inventive ways to shoot every scene that I couldn't really go by the book in any scene, and I thought that was very interesting to play into.
Now, I was gonna say most of this movie really relies upon one actor. I mean, everybody, there's other people there, but I was gonna say you all the weight is on what's her name, Yulia.
Julia Class. Yeah, I see. I thought you were going to say the guy who played the guy who runs the diner, Davy. That was my
Oh,
cameo. I was just making a joke. That was my cameo. I have one line. I'm just joking around. Yeah, no, Julia did a wonderful job. She was super dedicated and and super into the role, and she had actually developed this project, and actually brought me on board. She had been around prior to me being, like, she had been cast prior to me being involved, and she was actually also in Survive the Game, if you remember, as well.
so she brought you on board to this
Well,
project?
she didn't like hire me. She suggested me to the people that
Yeah,
hired, if that makes sense. But she was on board prior to me being involved.
but like Captors here is like totally different from what you did before. What drew you like got you excited?
I mean, one, being able to, like, not fall into the same stylistic stuff that I'd been doing. But for me also, like, I really like changing genres. Like, I like doing things that are like, like dabbling a little bit in this, dabbling a little bit of that. Like, the last thing I want to do is like repeat myself as a filmmaker. So like what I like to do is just try new things, and I like to have a lot of fun, you know, bringing my style and flair into different genres and
Mhm.
seeing how that works. And so Captors for me was my ability to do that. I thought, I just, when it just popped off the page, and I was like, wow, this is like, as much as it is like her carrying the movie, it's really like the camera telling this story, because there's not a lot of dialogue. And so I was like, okay, this is really kind of cool to play with.
Oh boy, and you certainly did push those limits with the camera. I mean, how did you plan all of this with? Obviously, you must have had a really good relationship with your cinematographer on trying to figure out what camera angles and everything to do
Oh
with.
yeah, me and Dave Newbert, who is the cinematographer, he's fantastic, and he and I, worked very, very, in tandem, as well as like Marcos Queto, who was our production designer, really brought a lot of flair to this house to make everything like a full image and very interesting, and act visually, and so I was very blessed to have two super talented people that were on board with making this really interesting, because it's an intimate, smaller scope movie that feels much bigger scope, and what we went for was trying to really enhance the scope of the film.
So, what was the most difficult shot for yourself to complete? I mean, there are for people who haven't watched the movie. I mean, there are camera angles like in every direction. I'm not even sure if you even used one camera. I felt like you set up like 20
only one camera. But I will tell you that the most difficult thing was two things that you wouldn't think would be the most difficult. But one was like the snow stuff, because like we were really shooting in a real snowstorm. Like that was real snow. So like, I mean, I'm wearing like, I'm wearing a t-shirt and jeans. Like I'm from LA. I'm not dressed for snow. I was freezing. And also like, I'm the type that like, I brought like a jacket. But like the jacket that I had Yulia wear in the movie, that big oversized jacket, we ended up getting her a jacket that was too small, like it fit her. And I was like, no, that doesn't work, because it needs to be a jacket that would be, the Captors jacket that she took. So I ended up taking off my jacket because I'm a bigger dude, and I had her wear that in the movie. So the jacket she wears in the movie was my winter jacket. And so I was there with no jacket, like freezing while she's like filming this, wearing my jacket. So I'm like, every time I'd be like, cut, I'm like, I'm so cold. And then the other thing is, as great as Shadow was, that was a real wolf. And so like, wolves don't exactly do what you want them to do. So getting those shots with the wolf, like were interesting. And it was really weird because like it'd be like, like intense and snarling, and then when we like call cut, like it would go back to just being almost like a dog wolf. Like it seemed like I wanted to pet it, but like it was interesting.
James, I feel like you're telling this story that you just want to put yourself in there somehow, not only with the diner scene, but also with the jacket. So this way you could be in the entire movie indirectly.
Sprinkled in. Well, I mean, I feel like that's kind of like what we do as like artists, is like, we sprinkle little pieces of ourselves, little things that are just, they might be like cool just for us, that are throughout movies, be it like, hey, that's like a jacket that's mine, or like, there's, in one of my movies, there's like, one of the characters is wearing a necklace that my dad gave me when I was a kid. There's little pieces of stuff like that where it would just be like cool things that are just in the movie that like, for me, I'm like, oh, there's a piece of me in there. Almost like, I don't know if you've seen like the, like all of the Harry Potter movies, but like, like a positive version of like the Horcrux, if that makes sense, where he had to like divide his soul into everything. Like I try to put a piece of my soul into every movie that I do.
Well, we could certainly tell. Now, James, I know you're from Los Angeles. Please don't tell me this was filmed in Los Angeles, because I don't know where you could get snow in Los Angeles.
It was filmed in LA, but the snow, so all of it was filmed in LA except the snow stuff was filmed up in Ponderosa.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So this cabin was in Los Angeles?
The exteriors of the cabin are in Ponderosa. And then all of the interiors were in Los Angeles.
Oh wow! You must have found a really creepy house. You found a creepy house in Glendale.
Yeah, a creepy Victorian house in Glendale.
Oh wow! So how did you handle filming in a place like that? Because it must have been really tough tackling onto all those I want to say shadows. That lighting must have been really tough.
Yeah. I mean, Dave really did an amazing job with the lighting on this. I mean, I really, again, I think he's super talented, and he's I think I really enjoyed my collaboration with him, and I think like the lighting schemes that we came up with were progressively more and more hallucinatory as the movie went on, and I thought he did a very good job of being able to tackle that aspect as the film progressed.
Well, you certainly did tackle a lot of different issues. But let's talk about the main theme of the film, because the main theme of the film, for those people who don't realize, it's about sex trafficking. But this is a very important theme now these days, because there's a lot more movies about sex trafficking that's actually coming out. Could you tell us about that?
Yeah, I mean, interestingly enough, like when we made the movie, because I mean, actually, the movie played Citrus and stuff, so it's now coming out like wide release, but it is a couple years back that this was made. It was actually made before the Bruce Willis movies, but I think that it's definitely an issue that is throughout the world, and I think a lot of people don't really talk about it, like people still being bought and sold in slavery. I think that's a horrible thing that goes on in the world.
So how did Yulia get into that headspace? I mean, first of all, it is tough to play a sex trafficking victim, but it's even tougher to play, basically carry the whole load throughout the entire film.
Yeah, I mean, Yulia and I, if memory serves, we not only went through and did like a lot of research together, but I believe we actually talked to a psychologist about like what somebody that had gone through that type of trauma would be experiencing, and then we tried work together on how to specifically show that visually on somebody's face and through body language, because as stated, it's not like she has a ton of dialogue. So it was mostly about like how does that affect your body language and your face and like your facial movements and eye contact and how you kind of move.
How did you want to play the fact of trying to fool us whether what's real and what's not real? I guess the character herself doesn't even really understand it.
I think that's kind of, for me, I believe that like I like the idea of almost leaving it open-ended, like what is real, what is not, is he alive, is he dead, what's going on? Like I like the idea of open-endedness because I feel like that's that constant state of fear and anxiety that this survivor is experiencing. So her character, it doesn't really matter if it's real or not, it's real to her, and so it's a constant existence either way.
Yeah, I love Bruce Davison himself.
He's amazing. I loved Bruce. He was so great to work with. He's such a good dude.
I'm pretty sure you didn't really have a lot of time with him through it, but tell us how you wanted to make him, how you could say, like creepy and yet mysterious at the same time.
I mean, we did a lot of stuff with the lighting with him and also his wardrobe. I mean, we had like this, like almost like S&M type mask that he was wearing with like a lot of like, his whole getup, like his ritualistic getup that he used to torture people. And I think, his natural speaking voice is just inherently like he's able to be creepy. And I think, basically how we lit him and how we did that, and really talking to him from a place of like, there's a weird, like almost justified action in what he's doing, because he although it's horrible things that he's doing, it's almost like he somehow has convinced himself that his character is doing it out of love to test these people. And I think that's kind of, an interesting thing to play with. We saw similar things in, a character like, John Kramer from the Saw movies.
Mm-hmm. It's funny, it's because every time he shows up in that costume, I almost felt like a comic book movie, like some villain out of the shadows or something like that.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. I like. I mean, there is like a strange comic book-esque vibe to what we did with the lighting and shadows and stuff in it. I think we, at the time we were just trying to play with like the surrealism, of everything, because it's, what she's created in her head manifesting itself.
Mm-hmm. I want to remark about the Bruce Davison scene where he's just like talking directly to the camera, and then he leans back and forth with the lights in his eye. It looks great. Is it as simple as to do it, to capture that scene, or is it actually dip much more difficult than we imagined?
It was actually more difficult because there were certain, like, he had like certain space that he could only lean a certain amount, and he'd have to have like the light just right here on his eye. And then if he leaned too far in, it'd be like on his forehead. And then if he leaned, but he also had to be able to hit the exact moment to have full facial light. So it's actually, and then we also had to like bring down everything around him so he was only there, but you still had the outline, so he backlit. So it was actually a very, very complex lighting setup to be able to pull off.
Gosh, I was really hoping you as a director said, you know what, it's really simple, that kind of stuff.
No, I wish. There are some stuff
you could do this at home.
Yeah, there's a couple things in the movie that are simple that are like pretty cool. That for instance, the shot where she's underwater and her hair is going up in the air. That's just literally like blue light on her with some haze. And we're just using a leaf blower behind her and shooting it in slow motion. And it looks like she's floating in water. And that is very simple to do.
James, you certainly amaze me on how you direct these scenes and movies. So you know what? I guess I'll have to wrap this by saying, what's next? I mean,
I believe the next
you showed me a very far-ranged project so far that I have seen.
Oh, thank you. That's super kind of you. And actually, the next thing of mine that's going to be coming out is also through Lionsgate, and it's called Hot Seat. And it stars Kevin Dillon and Mel Gibson that I directed, and that'll be out later this year. So that's the next thing we'll probably have a conversation about that then.
Very, very true. We probably will. And could you tell me, is this far different? What is this, a comedy now?
No, it's a very, very different. It's very different. It's more of like an action thriller, but it's pretty tense. So I'm excited for people to see it. But it's very different than either of the other three movies.
Well, I love how the fact that you cross genres in making totally different movies. But James, really appreciate you talking to me about Captors again. And you know what? If I talk to you one more time, I'm gonna have to form a fan club. I think that's how it works.
Oh man, thank you. I'll form a fan club for you, man. Thank you so much. You're so kind.
Thank you. Next time, James.
Bye.
Bye.